The crystal glass hovered inches from Victor Hale's lips, the dark red wine catching the chandelier light like a living thing, when the scream shattered the evening. Don't drink it. The sound cut through the dining hall with a rawness that didn't belong in a place designed to swallow noise with silk curtains and marble floors. Conversations died mid-sentence. Cutlery froze in midair. For a fraction of a second, Victor thought he'd imagined it, an echo of stress, perhaps, or a sharp memory from a life that no longer existed. Then he saw her. The maid stood near the tall double doors, her tray tilted dangerously in her hands. One glass had already fallen, shattering on the floor, the wine spreading like a dark stain across the white marble. Her face was ashen, eyes wide, fixed not on the mess she'd made but on him. On the glass in his hand. Victor slowly lowered it. Around the table sat ministers, investors, foreign dignitaries, people who ruled nations with signatures and ruined lives with a phone call. They stared at the girl as if she were an insect that had wandered into a museum. What did she say? Someone murmured. Security, another snapped. Two guards moved instantly, hands already reaching for their weapons. Victor raised his hand, not even looking at them. His gaze never left the maid. What did you just scream? He asked. His voice was calm, but the room felt colder. Victor Hale had built his reputation on that calm. Men feared him not because he shouted, but because he never had to. The maid swallowed hard. Her lips trembled. For a moment it seemed she might faint. Instead, she took a shaky breath and said, more quietly but no less firmly, the wine. Sir, please don't drink it. A ripple of disbelief moved through the guests. Someone laughed nervously. Another shook their head, already bored, already annoyed that the perfection of the evening had been interrupted. That's absurd, said a man to Victor's right. Probably nerves. Fire her and let's continue. Victor didn't respond. He set the glass down on the polished table, the base clicking softly against the surface. The sound carried farther than it should have. How do you know? He asked. The maid's fingers tightened around the tray until her knuckles turned white. Because I saw it, she whispered. Saw what? Victor said. Her eyes flicked toward the far end of the hall, toward the shadows beyond the columns where staff weren't supposed to linger. Someone switched the bottle. I tried to stop it. I tried to warn the sommelier, but he didn't listen. I didn't have time. The room erupted. This is outrageous. Are you accusing my staff? This is a setup. Victor stood. The movement alone silenced them. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his presence heavy, as if gravity bent slightly toward him. Take the glass, he said to the nearest guard. The guard hesitated only a second before lifting it carefully, as if it might explode. Victor turned to the maid. What's your name? Anna, she said. How long have you worked here, Anna? 6 months, sir. And before that, she hesitated. Cleaning work. Different places. Victor studied her face. There was fear there, real fear, but also something else. Determination. The kind that didn't come from panic but from choice. Lock the doors, Victor said calmly. No one leaves. Protests rose instantly, but the guards moved. Heavy locks slid into place with dull, final sounds. The dining hall that had hosted celebrations and victories suddenly felt like a courtroom. Victor gestured to the head of security. Test it. The man nodded and disappeared with the glass. Minutes stretched painfully. Anna stood where she was, forgotten tray still in her hands. No one offered her a chair. No one spoke to her. She felt dozens of eyes on her, some curious, some hostile, some calculating how much this interruption might cost them. Victor watched her the way a chess player watched a board after an unexpected move. The phone rang. The head of security returned, his face tight. He leaned in close and whispered something Victor hadn't expected to hear in this house. Poison. Fast-acting. Colorless. The word hit Victor not like fear, but like clarity. The room exploded again, but this time with panic. Chairs scraped back. Voices rose. Who would? This is insane. I demand. Victor raised his hand. Silence fell instantly. He turned to Anna. You just saved my life, he said. Her knees nearly buckled, but she remained standing. I didn't do it for that, she said quietly. That was when he noticed it, the way she avoided looking directly at him now, the way her breathing had changed. Whatever courage had carried her through the scream was draining fast, leaving something heavier behind. Why then? Victor asked. Anna's hand slipped into the pocket of her uniform. For a moment Victor thought she might be reaching for a weapon, but instead she pulled out something small and folded. She held it with care, as if it were fragile in ways paper usually wasn't. She unfolded it and held it up. It was an old photograph. The edges were soft, worn thin by time and touch. In it stood a woman with dark hair and familiar eyes, holding a baby wrapped in a pale blanket. Victor felt the air leave his lungs. The room vanished. 35 years collapsed into a single heartbeat. That's impossible, he said. Anna's voice trembled, but she didn't look away. My mother, she said. Her name was Elena. Victor's hands clenched at his sides. Elena, the name he had buried under layers of money and fury. The woman he had loved, trusted, and then believed had destroyed him. She worked here, Anna continued. Before everything. Before she was accused. Before she died. A murmur swept through the room. Victor barely heard it. They told me she betrayed you, Anna said. They told me she poisoned someone and ran. But she didn't. She tried to warn you. Just like I did. Victor stared at the photograph, at the eyes he knew better than his own reflection. And tonight, Anna whispered, tears finally spilling, they tried again. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Victor realized, with a cold certainty that settled deep in his bones, that the life he had built, every deal, every alliance, every enemy, stood on a lie. And it had just spoken his mother's name. Morning crept into the mansion not with warmth, but with exposure. The pale light revealed everything that the night had hidden, the sleepless eyes, the untouched food, the scattered files spread across the long table in Victor Hale's private study. The house no longer felt like a fortress. It felt like a crime scene. Victor sat at the head of the table, jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up, his tie loosened and forgotten. For the first time in decades, his hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of recognition. Across from him stood Anna, silent, her posture rigid as if movement might break the fragile order holding the truth together. The investigation had moved faster than Victor ever believed possible. When power shifted, it didn't creak, it snapped. By dawn, his security chief had traced the poisoned bottle to a private supplier approved not by Victor himself, but by a signature he recognized instantly. Leonard Hale, his cousin, his shadow, the man who had stood beside him at Alina's funeral, hand heavy on his shoulder, whispering that some betrayals cut too deep to forgive. Victor stared at the screen displaying bank transfers and archived emails. The dates reached back decades. Payments disguised as consulting fees. Offshore accounts layered so meticulously they'd seemed invisible, until Victor had ordered every wall torn down. She tried to stop him, the security chief said quietly. Your former partner, too. That's why he was poisoned back then. Not by her. Victor closed his eyes. The memory came unbidden, Elena standing in this very room, her voice urgent, her hands shaking as she begged him to listen. He had been younger, angrier, already intoxicated by ambition. Leonard had arrived moments later with documents, witnesses, proof manufactured with precision. And Victor had chosen the version of the world that cost him nothing. Except everything. She knew, Victor said hoarsely. She knew and she still tried to protect me. Anna's fingers curled into her palms. She never stopped, she said. Even after they fired her. Even after she was threatened. She believed you'd understand if you ever learned the truth. Victor laughed once, a short, broken sound that startled everyone in the room. Understand, he echoed. I built an empire on her grave. The door opened quietly, and a guard stepped in. Sir, Leonard Hale has been detained. He tried to leave the country 2 hours ago. Victor nodded, the motion automatic. Good. The guard hesitated. There's more, he confessed. On record. The words settled like dust after a collapse. They played the audio. Leonard's voice sounded older than Victor remembered, stripped of charm, frayed at the edges. He spoke of necessity, of survival, of how Elena had been inconvenient. Of how Victor had been easy to manipulate once grief and pride were properly fed. I did what had to be done, Leonard said in the recording. And I'd do it again. The file ended. Silence swallowed the room. Victor pushed back his chair and stood. For a moment, no one dared speak. He walked to the window, staring out at the gardens that had once been Elena's pride. She had loved planting things, said it reminded her that growth required patience, not force. I thought power meant control, Victor said quietly. Turns out it just means you get to decide how blind you want to be. No one answered. He turned to Anna. You lived with this your whole life. She nodded. I grew up knowing my mother died for telling the truth. I wanted justice, but more than that, I wanted you to know. Even if you hated me for it. Victor studied her face, so much like Elena's that it hurt. The same defiant line of the jaw. The same steadiness beneath the fear. You didn't come here by accident, he said. No, Anna replied. I trained. I waited. I watched. And when I saw the bottle, I realized the past wasn't finished with you. Victor exhaled slowly. The anger came then, not explosive, but deep and corrosive. It burned away illusions, leaving only responsibility behind. I can't give you your mother back, he said. I can't undo what I believed. But I can make sure the truth is known. Publicly. Completely. Anna's eyes widened. That would destroy your reputation. Victor nodded. Good. It deserves to be destroyed. By noon, lawyers, auditors, and federal investigators filled the mansion. Press statements were drafted and redrafted. Victor signed orders that dismantled structures he himself had designed to be untouchable. Subsidiaries were frozen, boards dissolved, charitable foundations, long used to launder image rather than money, were placed under independent control. Each signature felt like tearing out a piece of his own body. And yet, with every one, the weight in his chest eased slightly. When the announcement finally went live, the world erupted. Headlines screamed betrayal, corruption, scandal. Analysts speculated. Stocks plummeted. Victor watched none of it. He stood alone in the old greenhouse behind the house, surrounded by dead plants and cracked glass. Anna stood a few steps away, unsure whether she belonged in this moment. I used to come here with her, Victor said softly. She said nothing good survives if it's hidden from the sun. He turned to Anna. What will you do now? She hesitated. I don't know. I never planned for after. Victor reached into his pocket and removed a small object, a key, worn smooth with age. This was hers, he said. I kept it without understanding why. It opens a safety box. Everything she tried to protect is inside. Anna took the key with trembling fingers. You're not my maid, Victor continued. You never were. And you don't owe me forgiveness. But if you choose to stay, I would like to spend the rest of my life making this right. Anna looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded once. I don't forgive you, she said honestly. But I see you. Victor accepted that as a gift greater than absolution. As the sun broke through the clouds and lit the broken greenhouse, Victor Hale, billionaire, titan, architect of lies, understood something at last. His life hadn't fallen apart. It had finally stopped being built on a grave.